What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the All Yellow Jackets podcast. I'm your host, Jackson Caudell, publisher and lead editor of allyellowjackets.com. Big news today, and it's not just football. We've got basketball news, volleyball. They don't lose, so I don't know what new I can say there. They just keep on winning. And then, of course, we got a big breakdown this week ahead of the Ole Miss game. But first, be sure, if you're watching on YouTube, like the video on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel. If you're listening on podcast form, leave a rating, good or bad. If you need to leave 0 stars and tell me how bad this is, leave 0 stars. If you need to leave 5 stars, I definitely won't tell you not to do that. But love making this content for you guys. Go check out the website at allyellowjackets.com. It's always greatly appreciated, and I thank every single one of you that does. So let's just dive right into basketball recruiting. First off today, I figured I would be leading off with this, that everything had been trending in this direction, but the word was official today. One of the top players in the entire country, Jaeden Mustaf, he's ranked the number 5 combo guard in the country, the number 5 player in the state of Georgia. Damon Stoudemire lands his first big recruit. This is a very, very big commitment. I was there when Damon Stoudemire was hired in his introductory press conference, and he got asked several questions about recruiting because there's a ton of talent in the state of Georgia. And for the most part, Tech has just not been able to land a lot of these guys. And they landed one of their top recruits ever today, at least when it comes to the 247 sports rankings. And they're usually pretty accurate. So he is an attacking player. I'll say when you watch him, he just gets after it. He is downhill, always attacking the basket. I think when he gets under Damon Stoudemire, who has a track record of developing guards, I think the sky's the limit here, and I think he's going to be a big-time player for Georgia Tech. So that was obviously just a huge, huge commitment. And look, there are other players that Georgia Tech is pursuing on this team and have taken visits, and they might not be done. We'll see what happens. But this was a huge, huge recruitment. Basketball season still a couple months away. I think we're about 8 weeks from the official start of the season. I'm personally very excited to see how Stoudemire does in his first season, how quickly he can get Georgia Tech back to competing in the ACC. But big day today. There's a football game this weekend in Oxford, Mississippi. I will be there. Everybody remembers what happened last year. This is a totally different team and a totally different situation. Last year when Ole Miss came rolling in, Jeff Collins was still the coach. It was a 42-0 beatdown. And as somebody that was there, I can tell you it was worse than that. It was just a completely lifeless performance. And that you're not going to see that on Saturday. At least I don't think. So first, I guess, starting off with this game is the placement of the game. Last week, Ole Miss, it was supposed to be one of the biggest games of the weekend. Ole Miss going to Tulane. Tulane coming off a year where they went to the Cotton Bowl, beat USC, started off the season ranked. But right before kickoff, star quarterback Michael Pratt is hurt. Took a little air out of the balloon, at least for me. But when I went back and watched the game, their backup quarterback played pretty well. And this was a tied game going into the fourth quarter. Tulane had every opportunity to win this game. And there were several times, at least through the first half and going into the third quarter, where I was like, man, how did they not pull this off? And, it's a age-old argument. Who knows what would have happened if Pratt was in there. But Tulane's offense has operated pretty well, especially through the air, and they ran a lot of plays. They kept Ole Miss's defense on the field and really wore them down, which is something I'm looking at this week. But Ole Miss now 2-0. They got a win over Mercer. They put up a lot of stats in those games, and look, they looked impressive. Especially because Georgia Tech just played South Carolina State. I'm not a guy to sit here and tell you, man, if you look impressive, the team you're playing is obviously overmatched, but you want to go out and do what they did. They put up 74 points. Jackson Dart threw the ball around really well. But one thing that stands out about Ole Miss right now is they're not running the football well, and it's Georgia Tech can't stop the run. So it's we're going to see when push comes to shove who wins out in that battle, but I'll get into that in just a little bit more. But coming off a game against Tulane, and Lane Kiffin talked about this a little bit in his media press conference this week. He thought that they really, once they saw that Pratt was not going to be in the game, he thought they let their foot off the gas. They thought they were going to take it easy. And that just kind of caught my eye because that's a huge matchup. If you go on the road and lose to Tulane, that's their Super Bowl for the season. you're already behind the 8 ball. Couple that with Alabama lost to Texas last week. LSU's already got a loss to Florida State. Arkansas, they fooled around with Kent State, who I quite literally think is out of 133 teams in the country, I think I might put Kent State last. But that's up for debate. And I'm not going to debate that whole thing right now. But they looked really rough. Mississippi State went to overtime with Arizona. So maybe you have Ole Miss looking around the SEC West thinking, man, we go to Tuscaloosa next week. And then we play LSU. Like, if you even just split one of those games, or hell, if you win both of them, like, you're vaulting into the top 10. You're the favorites for the SEC West. And you also have a trip to Athens later in the year against Georgia. So anything's possible. So I think you're catching them. And this is just a very weird point for the Georgia Tech game to happen. Also throw in the fact that, go back to last year, Brent Key has a pretty good record as an underdog of covering at minimum. First game when he was interim coach, they were a 3-touchdown underdog to Pitt. What did they do? They won outright. They went in there with they went to North Carolina with a third-string quarterback as 3-touchdown underdogs. They won that game. They were underdogs against Duke. Though it wasn't as sizable as some of the other games, they won. They covered against Georgia. It was a big spread. So first game against Louisville, they covered. So against big spreads, Brent Key has had a track record of success. Now, that doesn't – you don't stamp that automatically. It's like, okay, anytime Georgia Tech's a big underdog, which they don't want to be big underdogs a lot of the time, but you can't automatically think they're going to cover. But I think there is reason, because this is just a very funny placement of the game for Ole Miss and Georgia. Like, you read the national media, like there's not a lot of respect going Georgia Tech's way in this game, and you wonder if that trickles down to Ole Miss, because this is not the same Ole Miss team as last year. Like, it's not like they returned a bunch of guys that played Tech last year. This is a team of 20-plus transfers. Like, they may not be taking this game very seriously and looking ahead to Alabama and LSU, which are going to be very, very big games for them. So we'll see what happens. But I'm interested to at least see if Ole Miss comes out fired up and ready to go from the starter. If Georgia Tech hits a couple plays and hits them in the mouth early, what does Ole Miss do? Because they responded well last week. Like, Tulane come out and hit them. Like, Tulane got up 17-7 in that game, and Ole Miss battled back. Their defense was very, very good in the second half. I still think it's going to be – I don't know how good their defense is yet, because the game against Mercer, I can't take away anything from that. No disrespect to Mercer. And then last week, they're playing Tulane without their best player. And I think Tulane's backup quarterback is pretty good, but he's not as good as Michael Pratt. Like, Michael Pratt's an NFL quarterback and one of the best quarterbacks in the country. So we'll definitely this Georgia Tech offense has been pretty good. Like, this is going to be the biggest test of the year, but they have been pretty good so far to say, and they've, I think, surpassed anybody's expectations as to what they could have been. So I think the biggest matchup in this game is going to be the Ole Miss offense against the Georgia Tech defense. And look, I don't need to read a million stats to tell you that Georgia Tech's defense has just not been very good. Like, you look at the rushing success rate allowed, it's 35.3. That is 110th in the country. That is very much not good. The ultimate test for if Ole Miss can run the ball this week is going to be this week. Like, if they can't get the ground game going against Georgia Tech, that should scream big warning signs for the rest of the season for them. And it's going to be the most talented running game that Georgia Tech has played all year. Like, Brent Key was talking about it this week. Quinshon Judkins is, if not one of the best running backs, he might be the best running back in the country now. He's off to a little bit of a slow start this year. I think he's averaging a little less than 4 yards a carry, has just a little over 100 yards on the ground. But, like, don't think that they're not just going to keep feeding him. Like, Lane Kiffin is one of the best play callers in all the sport. Like, he carries that reputation, and he backs it up. He's going to look at the film and see Georgia Tech struggling with tackling at the second level and in the secondary. And I think you're going to see a lot of what Louisville did in the second half. I think you're going to see a lot of quick screens to him. I think they're going to get him the ball in space and say, hey, all right, if Georgia Tech's linebackers or Georgia Tech safeties have him one-on-one, can they make the tackle? They failed in that aspect in the second half against Louisville. The Ole Miss is a very big challenge. Like, getting Quinshon Judkins on the ground in space, like, that's not easy, and they're going to have to do it, because I'm telling you that you're going to see that early and often. The bright spot for Ole Miss on offense has been Jackson Dart. He was highly hyped last year coming over from USC, and when I went and saw him in person last year when they came to Atlanta to Bobby Dodd to play, like he didn't have to do anything. So I was like, okay, I don't know how good Jackson Dart is. And as the year went on, he was very subpar. But this year, Ole Miss has one of the best passing attacks in the country. They're number 4 in passing offense, and he's doing it without some of his biggest weapons on offense. Like, I don't know if many of y'all know who this is, but UTSA transfer wide receiver Zachary Franklin he was one of the most sought after players in the transfer portal. LSU was after him, Miami was after him. There were so many big schools after him, and he chose to go to Ole Miss. He hasn't played yet. His status is very much up in the air, I think, for this weekend. I haven't seen any final confirmation that he's not going to play, but Dart's been without him. And then his top target this year, Trey Flowers, was injured in the first half of the Tulane game and was out. He's been able to lead a passing offense that has been without some of its top players and still been very, very successful. And he's doing it behind an offensive line that's been kind of shaky. They are 77th in sacks allowed, and you're going against a pass rush that does not have a sack so far this season. Kyle Kennard had a very good game last week, forcing turnovers, but nobody on Georgia Tech's front seven has a sack yet. This is going to be a big challenge for Andrew Thacker on the defensive side of the ball. Now, I know he creates some frustration among fans, and I see why. He has come up with game plans before against high-powered offenses, and it's worked. Last year against North Carolina is a perfect example. They had one of the best offenses in the country. Drake May, who I think is a much better quarterback than Jackson Dart, he couldn't do anything against the Georgia Tech defense. The secondary really locked those North Carolina receivers up. And if Ole Miss is missing those guys on the outside and they can key in on the run, I'm anxious to see how Jackson Dart can beat Georgia Tech over the top. Now, don't get me wrong. Ole Miss is very, very talented at wide receiver, even without those guys. Like they are extremely talented. And if Flowers is able to go, he is obviously going to create a ton of attention. But guys like Dayton Wade and Jordan Watkins, Michael Trigg at tight end. I know they brought in another transfer at tight end. Michael Trigg came over from USC last year. He's a very, very athletic player and somebody that the Georgia Tech defense is going to have to be very much aware of. There are plenty of options there. But like I said, the offensive line has been the biggest weakness for for Ole Miss so far this year. It's why I think the run game has been so poor, because I didn't expect, Quinshon Judkins to only have a little over 100 yards through a couple games like that. That was kind of shocking when I first looked at it. And just going back and watching the Tulane game, Tulane, I don't know that many people know this. They have a very good defensive line for the AAC, for their conference, and they have NFL guys up front. So it was a challenging game for the Ole Miss front, but Georgia Tech has got to be able to get in the backfield and create against probably one of the weaker offensive lines that they're going to see this year. I mean, right now, Ole Miss is ranked 83rd in rushing success rate, 34.5%. They've had a lot of early down success, but a lot of that has been through the air. And I wonder if they're just going to run the ball early and often. But I think the biggest thing is going to be creating havoc when you haven't done so this year. And you have to affect Jackson Dart in the passing game. Like, you can't let him sit back and dial things up, because Lane Kiffin is probably as good as any offensive play caller in the sport at getting guys open. Like, he will scheme guys open. And it would not surprise me if you get a lot of Judkins early and then a shot over the top to loosen up the box in the defense. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Tech comes out and tries to put a lot of guys in the box to stop the run, knowing that Kiffin is probably going to try to run the ball, given Georgia Tech's lack of success in stopping the run. So we're going to see this defense is going to be tested in so many ways. And Kia's talked about it this week. Like, Andrew Thacker is going to have to come up with a game plan, one, to get pressure on Dart, to contain Judkins in the backfield. And you can't game plan for this, but they have to tackle better. Like, even against South Carolina State last week, there were some looks that they gave them, and the defense just failed. Like, there was a lot of speed option to the boundary. They failed to contain that a lot of the time. The tackling was just very poor, and this is a big, big step up in competition. So a lot of things to watch on the defense. They're the most critical part of this game, in my opinion. If they can get pressure and create havoc, you could have a game going into the fourth quarter when nobody expects it. So a lot to watch on the defense, not just this game, but the rest of the year. The best side of the ball for Georgia Tech so far has been their offense. It's been no secret. Haynes King has been one of the best quarterbacks in the ACC. I think some, listening to others talk about him, I think some are waiting to see what he does this weekend to really put him in that conversation of one of the better quarterbacks performing this year, because you're not going to get a lot of credit for doing things to South Carolina State. Like, that's just unfortunately a fact. He has played in the SEC before, clearly, and he has experience playing in rough road environments. This is the first road game this year with new teammates, and you're going to be without Chase Lane this weekend, and that's something that he's the second leading receiver. He's averaging over 17 yards a catch right now, and they obviously have a connection going back to A&M, and they've been super in sync. One of the things I was worried about coming into this season was how the chemistry would be with the new wide receivers, because it's not just Chase Lane, it's Malik Rutherford is new, Dominic Blaylock. You have a lot of new guys, and you have Christian Leary, new guys coming in, Eric Singleton, true freshman. You haven't played with him before, so I was worried how long it would take for everybody to get on the same page, and he just had a natural connection with Lane, and you could see it. Like, it was just clear as day. And with him being out this game, I do wonder, you're probably going to get a lot more Eric Singleton, which I don't think any Georgia Tech fan is going to complain about seeing more Eric Singleton Jr. on the field. The guy has just been a total stud so far. Like, watching him in person, it's incredible for a true freshman how easy he makes the game look and how fluid he looks running out there. Like, he is a speedster. He could have had more yards and another touchdown in that game. I think he had one go off his fingertips. Haynes King put a little too much on it, but I think you're going to see plenty of him this weekend. And it for this passing attack going against Ole Miss's defense, obviously you're going to see a lot of familiar faces on the Ole Miss defense. Jared Ivey has a sack this year for them, former Yellow Jacket. Zamari Walton is out there. Akilo Stone at defensive tackle. Like, there's plenty of guys that Georgia Tech fans will be familiar with. The defensive line looked pretty good against Tulane. I'm not sure how good the secondary is for Ole Miss at all. Like, I don't think that they have seriously been tested at any point in time this year. Obviously, they weren't against Mercer. And then that they did get beat deep a couple of times against Tulane with a backup quarterback. So it would not surprise me if this is a pass-heavy game, especially if there is the possibility that the defense lets up plays and they get down. So I think I'm anxious to see how good this Ole Miss secondary is, because they could be a lot better than I'm projecting right now and giving them credit for. Because again, Tulane is a talented and well-coached team. Like that, I cannot say that enough. They scheme guys open as well. They use a lot of motion and formation. And Buster Faulkner, he's gonna have to scheme guys open. Like, you're gonna have to find a way to get Eric Singleton open down the field. You're gonna have to find a way to get Malik Rutherford, Christian Leary the ball, get him in space, and he's done a pretty good job of that so far. Not only that, it's the run game. Jamal Haynes and Trey Cooley were fantastic last week and were really good in the Louisville game. They just have to be consistent with it. I think it's safe to say Jamal Haynes is the top back now. Like, they said they were going to do running back by committee, but I think it's a two-headed monster back there with Jamal Haynes and Trey Cooley. Trey Cooley has contributed in the passing game. Like, he has been explosive as well. Jamal Haynes has done a very good job. I'm anxious to see maybe if the tight ends get a little bit more involved. I know Key was asked that question, and he was a little touchy on it. Like, he was like, okay, they're blocking really well. If they get involved in the passing game, like, they get involved, but they're doing their job, and that's fair. They have done a really good job blocking this year. Brett Seether has 2 touchdowns. He has been a good player in the red zone. There's no complaints there. It's just always something I'm watching at least here in the early part of the season, that I'm watching week to week. You know, as it gets on, if we're in week 5 and they're still not getting involved, like, okay, at this point, that may just not be a big part of the passing game. But they've done a pretty good job blocking. But I'm anxious to see if maybe they can get involved in the passing game a little bit. Offensive line, it has performed well this year. Again, South Carolina State is not going to be a huge challenge to you. But even in the Louisville game, excuse me, Louisville game, you had the 1 sack. It's going to be a big test for Ethan McKinney. Now, he graded out really well in that game. I think he had an 84.2 pass blocking grade from PFF. But this is a different environment. This isn't at home against an FCS team. This is on the road in an SEC stadium against Ole Miss, who has talented defensive linemen that played well last week. I think he's going to be challenged this week. Jordan Williams moved back out to right tackle last week, where I think he is best fitted to play. And the inside has played really well, especially the tandem of Joe Fusile and Weston Franklin. Those guys have made such a jump. It's been really good to see. And look, Connor Scaglione, he's gonna have to get better game by game. Like, he is obviously a newcomer from Princeton. He has a lot of experience playing at that level. He's played 2 games so far. I think he's a candidate that can get better year over year. Again, how they handle Ole Miss up front, they have to keep Haynes King clean in the pocket to let him take those shots downfield. I was saying last week, I wanted, in the Louisville game, a lot of the yards came after the catch. Buster Faulkner was getting the ball out quickly, letting his guys make plays in space. One thing I wanted to see going from week 1 to week 2 was, okay, can you get the ball outside the numbers and take shots deep? Okay, Eric Singleton, 42-yard touchdown, no problem. You're going to have to do it again this week. And really test that Ole Miss secondary and see how they go. And then just moving to players, let me hit. I guess I need to hit special teams real quick. All eyes are going to be on the kicking position. When Key was asked about it this week, and he gave the coach's answer saying, "Hey, we have competition at every position every week of practice." Okay, probably true, but I would be shocked if Aiden Burr doesn't go out there and kick. Gavin Stewart is 0 for 3. Burr comes in, hits a 42-yarder, and hits another, and it goes 2 for 2 for the day. I just don't think you can't trot him out there against Ole Miss. If you trot Gavin out there and he keeps missing kicks, that's going to tank his confidence, and it's not going to speak well. It's just, I would be surprised if it's not Aiden Burr this week, but he has to be consistent too. Those kicks last week were low pressure situations, and I'm not trying to take credit away from him, but it is what it is. There could be critical kicks in this game that he needs to hit, and we'll see what he does. I'm anxious to see it. He's a talented player, and he did well last week. So, and again, Gavin, I think, is still going to be on kickoffs. He was really booting the ball well. I think all 9 kickoffs he had last week went through the end zone. They didn't return the ball. Didn't get a chance to see punt coverage last week, which is a good thing. Your offense was dominant last week, so didn't get to see David Shanahan at all. But if he's out there, he played well against Louisville, so he could be key for field position, though. I will say that. In terms of players to watch, offensively, I'm going with Eric Singleton Jr. With Chase Lane out, I think he is going to play a big role this week. And he's going to stretch the defense deep with his speed. He has surprised me with his contested catch ability. That was something you saw a little bit in high school, but it was the thing that took notice was his speed. Now he is going he had a great catch against Louisville down the sideline right before his touchdown, which that was also a great catch going up and getting it. And they feel comfortable throwing the ball to him in one-on-one situations. I've seen it before, and even if the pass isn't complete, Haynes King is going there if he sees that he has a one-on-one matchup with him. So you're probably going to get some of those this week with some of the other receivers from Georgia Tech drawing attention. So I want to see if he's able to beat him deep and make a big impact on the game. Ethan McKinney's another one, just staying on the true freshman here. Starting at left tackle as a true freshman is a tough assignment. It's also tough when your first road game is in a very competitive environment. Vaught Hemingway Stadium. This will be my first time going. I've never been before, but everything I hear about it from people that have been there, it's a very tough environment to play in. So it's not going to be perfect. No true freshman is ever perfect, but he's going to have to win more than he loses and keep Haynes King clean in the pocket and open up lanes in the run game. So offensive line as a whole is going to be important, but how he handles the environment, keeps penalties down low, no false starts, that kind of thing. Those are the things you want to see, and how composed is a true freshman on the road. And he's answered the bell so far, so I think he's up to it. Defensively, there's not one player exactly. It's just the entire front seven, from tackling to pass rush to getting in the backfield and creating negative plays. That is the most important thing nearly every week. But for a team that hasn't done it so far, you're not going to win many games with the statistics that the defense has right now. They don't have a sack, and they have 4 tackles for all season. You're just not going to beat many teams doing that, especially the number 17 team in the country in their home stadium. They have to make Jackson Dart uncomfortable. That Tulane was not able to do it enough last week. We'll see if Georgia Tech can dial things up. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some blitzing, especially if they can't get pressure early. So the entire front seven as a whole on defense, and then special teams, it doesn't take a genius to figure out. Everybody's going to be watching the kicking competition. If Aiden Bird's the first one to try it out there, can he go out there, kick well, and take hold of the job? We'll see. Like, it's a big, if he is indeed the guy, it's a big opportunity for him. But yeah, it's going to be a very I'm not going to make a prediction on the show today. I know I've done that in the past, but I'm still mulling this one over a little bit. It will be up tomorrow morning on allyellowjackets.com. Be sure to check it out. There's going to be a lot more Ole Miss content coming. I will be traveling tomorrow, so I'm going to go ahead and knock all that out today. But that'll wrap it up for today's show. There is a chance that Ole Miss is totally overlooking Georgia Tech with games against Alabama and LSU on deck, knowing that both those teams have lost a game. I think there's a chance that Ole Miss is overlooking Georgia Tech a little bit, and that could open up an opportunity for them to win. But striking early is going to be important, and not letting big plays happen from the Ole Miss side is going to be very important. Duh, Captain Obvious, but it's just true. You can't get down early on the road in an environment like this, because I think if they got up early, they're just going to try to milk the clock. And given how Georgia Tech has defended the run this year, that would scare me. So not letting the big plays happen early and striking first, I think those are going to be very important keys for this game. But my official breakdown and prediction will be posted tomorrow. Be sure to go check it out there. I will be back with a breakdown reaction show on Monday from this game. And then there's another road game. We got a game against Wake Forest the next week. They said they sold out their stadium today, 31,000. So that'll be an interesting environment. But all focus is on Ole Miss. Let's just keep it on Ole Miss right now. But like this video, if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to the channel. I love making Georgia Tech content. It really is a pleasure, and I enjoy doing it and interacting with everybody. Want more content? Like and subscribe. That would be helpful. If you're listening on podcast, give a review. If you think I'm doing a crap job, make sure to give 0 stars. If you think I'm doing okay, 3 stars is fine. 5 stars is even better if you think if you think I've earned that. But that'll do it for me today. If anybody is going to the game this Saturday, safe travels. Make the road environment tough. Like I want, it'll be fun to see Georgia Tech fans there. But that'll do it for me.